Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our final talk in the September Symposium series. Today, we have clinical counselor Courtney Doherty speaking for us on navigating relationships and role changes. My name is Alana Dillon. I'm an Education and Support Services Coordinator at Parkinson Society, BC, and I'll be facilitating our webinar today. Before I introduce Courtney, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items with you. First, I want to let you know that we are recording the presentation, so it will be available on our website along with the presentation slides. And secondly, you will see a chat icon at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that icon, it will open it up to the chat box, and you can use that chat box during the webinar to make any comments or questions on today's presentation topic. And finally, to optimize your experience with this webinar, please ensure that you adjust your speaker volume both on your computer as well as on your actual speaker so that you can hear the webinar well. I'd like to introduce Courtney now. Courtney Doherty is a registered clinical counselor with a master's in counseling psychology from Adler University and a BA in psychology from Dalhousie University. She helped launch the counseling program at the Parkinson Society, British Columbia, where she provides counseling services. Courtney also works with individuals in her private practice on issues ranging from anxiety and depression to brain wellness and grief. When she's not working, she and her husband are raising their two young sons. Courtney, thanks for being here, and I will pass it over to you now. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Alana, and thank you for the warm welcome. Some of you may have met me before, and for others that don't know me, I'm Courtney again, and I'll be presenting today on navigating role changes in Parkinson's. So I'm just going to go through an outline first, and I usually like to reserve questions for the end, which there will be some time for. However, I never want to leave somebody confused. So if you do have any questions throughout or any clarification that needs to be, please do put it in the chat and either myself or Alana will address it. Otherwise, there'll be plenty of time at the end as well. So here's a little bit of an outline for what we will be speaking on today. So first, a bit of an understanding of role changes we may see in Parkinson's. Then I will cover grief and loss, as well as coping with grief and loss. I'll provide some tools for healing, which is primarily mindfulness and CBT, which we'll find out what that means later. Adjusting to new roles, and then we'll do a brief identity exercise, more just like a thought exercise if we have time. And then we'll go into some communication stuff. So communication in Parkinson's, some strategies to communicate, and potentially a communication exercise as well if we have time. And finally, we'll talk about self-compassion, which is a great topic not many people are aware of, and then some key points at the end. So, role changes in PD or Parkinson's disease. As many of you obviously know, that the impact of Parkinson's can be in many, many different ways. And so it can affect our capacity to do different things. And that goes for not only the person with Parkinson's, but also the care partner or loved one in the person's life. So our capability can shift, and we may become less reliable. So that may be because of different symptoms we're experiencing, or the efficacy of our medication and whether we are feeling on or off. So that all can affect our reliability and our ability to do certain things and capability. Our external environment may also change, so things like our relationships and maybe our engagement in certain things like certain activities or certain community aspects we are involved with, and roles will change. And that's kind of on a spectrum, so it depends how much they may change, but roles within our family, roles within our workplace if we're still working. So, we may go from working to not working, or if we we're never working before and our partner can no longer work, maybe we will have to start working. We may go from being the main breadwinner in the family to now having to be a caregiver. In friendships, we may experience, the lack of desire to see friends, or we may feel more socially anxious, so we avoid social settings. So that may change. We may go from helping others to needing help. So as you can see, these are different ways that our roles can change. And these changes make it harder to do things that we once just did so naturally. And so we may feel forced to leave certain roles behind before we're actually ready to do so when we're diagnosed with something like Parkinson's. And this transition and this forced transition can lead us to feeling confused and can lead to a big shift in our sense of self and in our identity. And we may feel lost. We may be left feeling vulnerable as well and unstable because our usual, typical, natural ways of living is challenged. And that's also the way we are used to coping. So that's also challenged. So these losses, all lead to grief, because loss equals grief often. So we may feel that these role changes have led us to lose things we felt purpose from and fulfillment from and joy from. If we can no longer participate, let's say, in certain social events or certain activities because of our diagnosis, or because we're caring for someone with a diagnosis, then that really does make a shift in our identity, which is also a loss. And we also can lose things, like I mentioned, our coping strategies. And this all can lead to feelings of grief. And so then mourning can occur. So just like we can mourn an individual for the loss of an individual, when we're bereaving someone, we can mourn the loss of anything, really. And so mourning the loss of parts of ourself and the life we maybe thought we would have. This is all normal, and it's a part of the grieving process. So it's normal to focus on what's been lost and what we can't do, but it's obviously not helpful to stay stuck in that grieving process. So we can learn to grieve and adjust to things simultaneously. Both can happen at the same time. It's not all of one or all of the other. And so how can we cope, and how can we do these things to adjust? It starts by acknowledging the emotions that do come with our loss. So this can be really hard for some people, as I put here, acknowledging that we are feeling certain ways and that it is okay to feel these certain ways. So we need to try and identify or recognize and observe what's underneath the surface of what's going on. I say here, don't push emotions away, because they are messengers for us. They're really here to help us. And if I can teach you all something today, that is what I hope to teach you. As well as remembering that emotions are impermanent. They come and go. I think so often we're afraid of our emotions, and so we try to push them away because they start creeping up and we go, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm gonna just put it over here or stuff it down or distract myself this way or do that. And in the short term, that might help. Distraction is okay in the short term, or covering it with something else, okay for the short term, but long term, it's just going to creep up again and probably be even stronger. So remembering that emotions come and go. So they're not as scary as I think we create them in our mind to be. So they're impermanent, they come and they go. When we're super happy, that doesn't stay. When we're super low and not feeling great, that also goes. It's always moving, it's always fluid, whether you do anything about them or not. And we're going to try and work on actually having even that much more awareness and understanding of them so that they can come and go even faster. So here I recognize what's going on underneath the surface I put. So often when we're dealing with something like an illness like Parkinson's disease and all the loss that, and the forced transition to different roles, we often are angry, which is very normal. But as you can see here, and this is the emotions iceberg, anger is above the surface. And it's often what's referred to in my profession as a secondary emotion. So it is on the surface, it's what we're expressing, it's how we're behaving. And yet, when you dig into it and you look below the surface, there's often so much more going on that is causing the anger. So there's various emotions here, but it's often fear, sadness, vulnerability, confusion, whatever it is. I want us to learn to dig into what's actually going on, so then we can understand where our anger is coming from and hopefully reduce our anger and deal with what's actually going on for us, and in a more therapeutic way. So in my next slide, I write, what you resist will persist, and you need to feel it to heal it. So these are some kind of corny, catchy psych terms, but the meaning behind it is with what you resist will persist means the more we resist our emotions, the more we're hesitant to feel our emotions, the more they will persist. So for instance, if we have, I'm going to ask everyone right now, don't think of a white elephant. Don't think of a white elephant. Don't think of a white elephant. Guess what everybody is probably thinking of? I know I'm only thinking of a white elephant. So I'm doing the opposite. So we're trying to resist the thought, but it's everything that's going to persist. If you think about it, I usually use, if you think about a beach ball, and if you push that beach ball underwater, what happens? Pops up. It doesn't matter how hard you push it. You could have 10 people sitting on top of it. It's going to bounce back up to the surface. So if we can think of emotions the same way, if we try to resist them, push them under the surface, push them under the surface, they're still going to pop up. And so we need to feel it to heal it. We need to acknowledge what's going on, let it be, sort of dig into it and let it pass. And it passes so much faster that way, but it's such a foreign concept to so many of us to actually feel our feelings and to sit in them for a moment. Even when I'm working with clients and tears start to come up immediately, I'm sorry, and people swallow their tears. And, we're just not, for the most part, we're just not geared toward feeling our emotions. We're scared of them. And so again, if I can only plant one seed today, that would be the biggest one I want to plant, is to try and just lean into them. They're not as scary as we think they are. They're not going to take over our whole life. And it's actually going to let you pass through them a lot faster than the alternative. So continuing with these tools for healing, Parkinson's can often make us feel very stressed, clearly. And a big reason why is because we can't predict what the future holds. Most people say, like, I just want to know, person with Parkinson's or care partner, both. I just want to know what the next year is going to look like. The next 5 years is going to look like. And we can't tell you that. But I want you to remember that that's not only with Parkinson's. Life with or without Parkinson's is so unpredictable and full of changes. I think when we're diagnosed with something like Parkinson's, we feel that there's like this urgency to know but truly, we have no idea what's going to happen. God forbid I could walk out the door and get hit by a car today. It could happen. We have no idea. And so we're so busy in our minds focusing on the past, which often keeps us anchored in the grief loss and can lead to that anger and keeps us angry, focusing on the past. What happened here? What could I have done differently there? I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Can't change the past. And then we also tend to have a focus on the future and feeling anxious and unsettled about what the future is going to hold. And yet we cannot predict nor control the future. We think we can. We have a false sense of knowing what's going to happen to us. We have no idea, again, with or without Parkinson's. And so focusing on the past, can't change it. Focusing on the future, can't predict it. can't read what's going to happen, we're essentially wasting our brain space and our time. And we're so programmed to do that. So what I want us to learn to do is notice when our thoughts are going to the past or the future and bring it back to right here, right now, this moment, right here. So right now, you're all sitting, listening, hopefully listening to this mindfulness explanation. Can you feel your bums on your seats? Are your feet on the floor? Are they crossed? Is the surface of your floor soft or hard? And then I may have lost you again now. You may be back on that train of thought, or maybe I never had you to begin with. But what I'm trying to teach in this moment is something called mindfulness. So being full, having your mind full of this present moment. So we all know the opposite. The opposite is going throughout our day and not even realizing what we did in the day. We've all driven from point A to B and not even remembered being in the car. That's mindlessness. Mindfulness is being here right now, and it's a practice. So again, it's about noticing when the thoughts are going back and forth to places that really are not helpful for us anymore and bringing them back to right here, right now. And the reason that can help is because we're not dwelling on what was, we're not looking at what is going to be, we're focusing on what is right now. So instead of, oh, I could have done, I used to be able to run marathons and now I have Parkinson's, or, oh gosh, am I going to end up like this person I know that had, no quality of life, and so on and so forth. Okay, it's not helping and we don't know. So what can I do today? Okay, well, today I can still, go for long walks and I can still do this. And so also focusing on what we can control in the present moment. And it also can really significantly reduce anxiety. So continuing with this, so I just did that exercise with you, can you feel your body on your chair? What temperature is the room? What are you wearing? Is it light? Is it hard? Is it soft? Is it itchy? What color is it? Engaging your senses in the present moment is also a mindfulness practice. And it's a way to keep ourselves grounded in the present moment. And it's very, very, very healing. So more tools for healing. This is CBT, I mentioned at the beginning, or cognitive behavior therapy, which you may or may not have heard of. And the premise of, or the theory behind CBT is that our thoughts are connected to the way we feel and that the way we behave or the way we act. So if we have negative or irrational thoughts about something, we will feel accordingly, usually negative, sad, anxious, whatever that might be, and then act accordingly. And it's almost like a vicious cycle. So the theory behind CBT is that we start to notice when we're having irrational or unhelpful thoughts, and we then go in and reframe them to something more rational. So not necessarily negative to positive, but potentially negative to neutral or irrational to rational. So for example, I can't do anything, nobody likes me, da 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 da. Those are very real automatic thoughts that a lot of us have sometimes. Instead, okay, that's not useful. That's also not rational. Obviously, people like me. I went out with friends yesterday. I have this going on for me tomorrow. So you really have to look at the evidence instead of just allowing your brain to tell you these stories and to really dictate the way you feel and the way you act. So it's much more complex than this, but this is just a snapshot of CBT. And so here again, I write feeling our feelings and taking steps to accept and adjust to our new normal. And then I write here, we only have control over one thing in this entire world, and that is our perception. So the way we perceive things. So take a minute to think about that. We only have control of one thing in this entire world, and that's the way we allow ourselves to perceive things. So that's not to say that we may not still have a habit of initially thinking about things in a given way, or the way we've always sort of thought about things. But then we have the control to acknowledge that we've thought about it in a certain way and to try and shift our view and think about it from a different perspective. And that can be so healing, but it's a practice. So the way we think about things can lead to how we feel and how we act. So it's best to notice our thoughts and reframe them. So notice when your thoughts are unhelpful. I'm going to say it again. What evidence supports or rejects your thoughts? And what's a more rational way to look at this situation? Or even better yet, what's, if your friend was sitting beside you looking at the same situation, would there be some other ways of looking at the situation? Like, is there different options of looking at the situation? Usually, yes, because perception is individual and everybody can perceive one same situation in various different ways. So it's good to remember that our way isn't the only way. And I also always say, don't believe everything you think, because that's just our perception. It's just our thought process. It often is not facts. Okay, so now adjusting to these new roles that have shifted for us. So I want us to start understanding what old roles gave us and what we feel like is missing from those roles. And so if we can expand our view to accommodate the new us, that can be really helpful. So what did our old roles give us, and what do I feel like is missing? And so can we find different ways to contribute and participate and take part in certain roles we used to have? So for example, can you help out around the house? Can you plan a weekly menu, or help clean up, or schedule your own doctor's appointments? Anything that can help to make you feel more productive and to help whoever you're with in that dance. Okay. So exploring new ways to find meaning and purpose is also going to be so beneficial for you. There are so many things you can still do. Just because certain roles that you're so used to are no longer in your life potentially doesn't mean that you can't find meaning and purpose and fulfillment in another form. And maybe you're already doing that. And so learning new approaches and new skills, keeping an open mind as well for that, and using your strengths and understanding what those strengths are is really important. So again, here I'm saying I want you to focus on what you can control versus what you cannot control. So you can't control a given thing. Okay, well, we're not going to dwell on that because that's not helpful and that's not going to make me feel better. Instead, what can I do? What can I focus on? Again, easier said than done, but it's a practice. So it's constantly recognizing when our thoughts are not helpful and bringing them back and reframing them. So I see there's some questions in the chat potentially. Maybe we'll get to some of these. I think they're bigger questions, so we'll look at this later. Yeah, we'll read the questions later because they're not right here right now. Okay, so adjusting to new roles. So many things happen around us all day long. Okay. And so if we're only thinking about things that we can't control and what we used to be able to do and so on and so forth, we're missing the day. That's the same thing as when we're in our mind and just living up here instead of living in the here and now, right? Again, it's easier said than done because we're so programmed to kind of just like mechanically going on with our day. But if we can, I say here, slow down, be present, and absorb the moment in the day, we can find so much more joy. So there's small moments throughout everyone's day that is so joyful, but we often tend to ignore those moments and just think of the negative. We actually are prone as humans to filter out positive information and to only filter in negative. Some people are better at doing this than others, but it's a survival tactic. And so we have to be that much more on top of recognizing the positive parts of our day and the things we're grateful for. And if we can sprinkle those things throughout our whole day, it's going to lead to so much more joy and so much more calmness in your life. So everything from enjoying that hot cup of coffee in the morning and really being there, sitting, drinking it, enjoying the sunny day before they're all gone, smelling the fresh cut grass if you enjoy that, reading a great book, really enjoying a call with your friend or your grandchild on the phone, and being there while you're doing it. So this is mindfulness practice, being in the moment. So we're often so busy telling ourselves certain things and living our own narratives out in our head that we miss all this, like I said. And so we really, really do need to slow down, be present, and absorb the moment of life, because again, this is where joy lives. So these micro moments, I like to call them. So I'm going to ask you all right now to take a minute, and if you want to write something down, by all means. If you don't, you can just think about it. But I want you to take 5 minutes to think of what comes up for you when I say, when you ask yourself, who am I? Or if I ask you, who are you? And each one of you, I want you to take a few minutes to consider this. You can write it down if you want, as I mentioned, or just think about it. So who are you? I'm going to give you a bit of time to do that. And just as everyone is doing that, thank you so much for the chat. Yes, this recording, I don't know if it will be sent out. Maybe Alana can speak to that, but it will be available up on our website, as will my slides. So I don't know that you'll get an individual email, but usually in about a week's time, it is up and available on our website. But you can always email us if you want a link to it. Hopefully that helps. Okay. So give me a couple more minutes to think about this. It can be very tricky for some people to answer, who am I? Okay, so we're going to come back now just for the sake of time. And I'm going to ask if anybody wants to participate and write in the chat what they put down, and no pressure if not. I'm just curious if anybody wants to share, and I'll read that as. So what I'm really curious to know is, what was, and not actually, just sort of a rhetorical question, what is on your list? Is Parkinson's the main focus? Maybe it's the only focus. But I want us all to remember that Parkinson's is only one part of your life. It feels easy for me to say that, of course, when you're dealing with it all day long. And yet it's one part of who you are. So just like if you had, diabetes, I don't know that that would be your first explanation. Hi, I'm Courtney and I have diabetes, maybe. But what I'm trying to get you to see is that there's so much more to you. I'm Courtney, I'm a counselor, I'm a mom, I'm a partner, I'm a friend. I'm originally from Ottawa. I live in BC now. I'm a sister, I'm a cousin. I like to cook. Like there's a lot of different things, right? And so, yeah, somebody wrote father, husband, uncle, friend. Exactly. There's so many things, and Parkinson's is just one piece, right? And so it's hard because it intertwines itself in many parts of our life, but it's not our entire experience. I think that's what I want us to remember, okay? And the reason I do this exercise is because I want us all to have that self-awareness, because it's so important to be aware of ourselves and our own identity in order for us to understand what we need and what's missing, and to ask for that, okay, in order for us to live a fulfilling life and to navigate these, role changes, which obviously leads to navigating relationship changes and so on and so forth. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide. So communication in Parkinson's. So effective communication is crucial. It's a crucial part of any successful relationship, whether that's between two partners romantically, or a child and a parent, or colleagues or friends. It's crucial. And so we know we can't read others' minds, but sometimes I think people forget that when they're in long-term relationships, we can get into interesting habits. And so we really do need to spell things out, especially for people we live with. So I want to remind everyone that communication is both verbal and nonverbal, as many of us know. Nonverbal includes the body language, postures, gestures, facial expressions, which I write here is oftentimes very difficult for people with Parkinson's, because many people with Parkinson's lack facial expressions, or lack, the same gestures and so on and so forth that they had previously. And so it can almost make people feel like they're not being heard, or that the person with Parkinson's is ignoring them, or not listening, or not empathic. But it's really a matter of a function of movement. So keeping that in mind, okay? And then verbal communication, express thoughts, feelings, experiences through things like words, signs, or in writing, okay? And so I'm going to move on to the next slide now. So the first step in effective communication is about ourselves. So identifying for ourselves what we feel and what we need. So that's why at the beginning of my talk today, I'm trying to get everyone to start to understand and observe and identify our feelings and our emotions, and to welcome them instead of pushing them away. And then we can figure out, okay, I'm feeling this way and I need this to feel better, for instance. So first step is identify your feelings and needs. Second step is express your feelings and needs effectively and calmly. So from a listener's perspective, that's going to look at stopping, focusing on the speaker, listening without interrupting, showing empathy and understanding, asking questions to clarify, and repeating what you've discussed. So stopping and focusing on a speaker seems so simple, and yet when we're in our everyday life, we often do not do that. And of course, it can't happen, 100% of the time, but especially when it's something important, we need to stop and focus and listen. And we don't want to interrupt, because we're often prone to doing that as well. And so if we just slow down, be in the present moment as well with our thoughts, because again, that's when our thoughts can take over and think, well, this is, listen to the person, be in the moment, you'll get what you need to say across later, and show empathy and understanding. So try and hear where that person is coming from, and to be with them as they're speaking, and then clarifying and responding to what they said to you is very good listening skills. And then on the flip side, as the speaker, when you're trying to say something, especially if you're a care partner, I want us to start by considering the time of day. And so, of course, this isn't in everyday interactions. We can't just wait for a certain time of day to have everyday interactions with our partner with Parkinson's. But when it's something super important or something we really need them to focus on, we do have to consider time of day, especially if they are prone to being off medication often. It's best to catch them at a time they're going to absorb the information better. So consider the time of day. And as well, stop and look at the listener. So sometimes we're talking to somebody and we're over here and, oh, you didn't hear me. No, that's the dance, right? Parkinson's or no Parkinson's, that's often a dance between partners. And so it makes it a lot easier to stop and listen and hear, especially if people have swallow or communication issues. So stop and look. Be mindful of your tone. That's a huge one. And that goes for both care partner and the person with Parkinson's, because even if you are a person with Parkinson's that has communication and voice issues, if you've taken any courses on it, you know that the general understanding behind it is think loud, be loud. So I want you to actually think of your tone, think of the way you're saying things, and focus on doing it that way. And you'd be surprised, for those of you who know, if you know, you know, if you tell someone that's mumbly and quiet, stop, slow, say it loud again, it's phenomenal how much of a night and day it can be. So tone, being mindful of our tone on both sides, right? So if we're like, using a really snotty or salty tone with somebody, the message will take on that tone. So really being mindful of the tone. Expressing your words very clearly and calmly. So making sure you're grounded before you even speak. So grounding yourself, being calm, being present, knowing what you want to say, and expressing that. Using I statements. That's a big one for a speaker. A lot of people tend to start with you. So you always do this, or you have to do it like this, or da-da. And immediately when we say something to somebody in communication like that, the other person has their walls up, because it's almost like a blame, even though it may be very well the opposite of that. It's the way we say it. So using I statements, many of you have probably heard of this before, but starting with I feel that, or I would like to, so on and so forth. It takes ownership, and it opens up the door to an open communication and an open dialogue, rather than feeling any like attack or criticization if we start with something else, basically. And then keep it present. This is, again, just such a snapshot, because I don't have a lot of time today, but keeping things present when we're speaking, especially in relationships. So we can often have a tendency to bring up old things, and that's just gonna snowball into a whole other area of things, okay? So when we're trying to speak about something, trying to keep it present in this moment. Again, this is all a practice too. None of us are perfect. It's just food for thought. And so trying to keep it in the present moment, what we're asking and what we need to happen. And then I write at the bottom here, remember you're on the same team, which is really simple statement, but it's so true. You're on the same team, you're rooting for the same team, and you're in this together, basically. And so we can often feel like enemies at times, and it can feel very lonely and very maddening. And so if we can just remember this simple thing, that we're grieving, we're going through a stressful time, we're in a lot of noise right now, but really at the end of the day, we're on the same team and we love each other. It can really just soften the edges of everything. Okay, I'm just gonna leave this exercise as thought, because I want to cover the last slides and give plenty of time for some questions at the end. So I was going to do an exercise here, but you can do it just quickly now if you want, or after when we wrap up. So I said, think of something you need to feel better today. So we all need something that can help us to feel better, whether it's some time to ourselves, even 5 minutes, I write, or, we need our partner to listen to us, or so we need to get some support from a friend. Whatever it is, take a moment to think about it. And I say you can write it down if you'd like. And then after this webinar, I'm going to challenge you to communicate those needs using some of the strategies from the previous slide. So again, if we go back to the previous slide, we first need to identify our feelings and needs. Secondly, we need to express those feelings and needs effectively and calmly. So what do you need to feel better today? Again, it can be super simple or it can be more complex. Or it can be a piece of a puzzle, like you need something today that will lead up to something on the weekend that can happen, for instance, planning for something. So I'm going to challenge you to do that. Okay. And I really just want to cover this last topic before we wrap up. So the final topic I want to speak about is something called self-compassion. And so it's exactly as it sounds, showing compassion to ourselves, which is a foreign concept to many people. So I write here, recognize that you're not alone. There are literally millions of people living with similar experiences around the world, both people with Parkinson's and care partners, millions of people around the world with Parkinson's and people that love them and care for them. And so you're truly not alone, truly not alone. Showing yourself the same support and compassion that you would show a dear friend is essential. So we're often very harsh and self-critical, and then we wonder why we feel so bad about ourselves when, maybe the dialogue in our head all day is really degrading and belittling and harsh, truly. And it's so programmed for a lot of us. It's very easy to put ourselves down and to tell ourselves we're not doing well enough and so on and so forth. But then if you ask somebody, tell me your 5 best skills or your 5 best strengths. Some people are like, oh, I don't know, I'm not that good at this. So we're very easily prone to self-criticism and harshness. And then, like I said, at the end of the day, we're like, I wonder why I don't feel great today. Well, imagine you were speaking to a dear friend the way we often can speak in our own minds, or you're speaking to your child that way. You probably would not have a very good relationship with them if you have one at all. So you really, really need to work on shifting that for ourselves. So fixing that self-talk and readjusting that to a more supportive, compassionate self-talk. So that's honestly what mostly self-compassion is about. It's about recognizing we're not alone and supporting ourselves. So we need to change our inner dialogue to be more supportive and to come from a nurturing voice, because this will really improve our relationship with ourselves and in turn with others. So saying something that you need, what do you need in a certain moment, instead of seeking it from somewhere else, oh, I wish my partner would say this to me, or, oh, I wish I could say that to somebody else. What do you need in a given moment? How can you soothe yourself? What would you have needed to hear when you were little, for example? And what do you need to hear now? So something like, I write it here actually. I know this is hard right now. It's normal. You're feeling so stressed. I'm here for you. And that's talking to yourself. So I know this is so hard right now. It's normal. You're feeling very stressed right now. I'm here for you. So a very soothing, supportive, nurturing statement. That's the whole theory behind self-compassion. And there is so much research behind this theory. There has been in the past few years, but specifically, I'd say specifically in the last decade to the last 5 years, so much research that this can be very healing. So it's a concept that we all need to adopt, is to give ourselves a break, essentially, and to have more compassion for ourselves, because it makes us feel better, and then in turn makes everything around us feel a lot better. And our relationships and our ability to communicate and feel our feelings and all of the above. So just some key takeaways for today. We talked about role changes that are common in both the person with Parkinson's and the care partner when dealing with something like Parkinson's, and how grief and mourning are normal when these kinds of transitions show up for us. We talked about feeling our feelings instead of shutting them down. to start learning about our thought process and to training our mind to come back to the present moment. We talked about using our strength and skills to find new meaning and purpose, and then this will help us adjust to new transitions and new roles we are taking on. We talked about enjoying the small moments and having gratitude for them, learning effective communication strategies and utilizing them, thinking of our needs and expressing them effectively, and then having compassion for yourself. And then I wrote, this stuff isn't easy and you're doing a great job. So now that leaves us some time, quite a bit of time for some questions or comments. I see some people wrote up in the chat, how do you deal with chronic sorrow while living in PD and with PD in the family when society doesn't want to face pain in life? And so I think I touched on some of this, right? The chronic grief, and with Parkinson's, it's often what we call a series of losses, because it's not just one diagnosis and you deal with it as it is, it's progressive. And so, albeit it's typically slower progressing, especially at the beginning, you may, get used to a certain place you're at and certain symptoms, and then you may have a little bit of a downslope, and then you have to adjust and, get used to those things. So it's a series of losses. So what that means is it's kind of a constant grieving process and a constant shifting and adjustment to the new normal. And so I think how you deal with that is to feel your feelings and be open about them, and to shift the way, society doesn't want to face it, but I mean, we also kind of dictate how people treat us and how, so if we can learn to sort of sit in our emotions, be comfortable with them, and, then kind of move on going forward with that, then that is really going to allow us to continue on. And I don't know if this is answering your question or if you want to write another part about it, but it's really about feeling what you're feeling and moving forward, even though we're feeling these certain ways, because the feelings come and go, come and go, come and go. And so also, again, it's all these things together. So recognize how we're feeling and allowing the feeling, but not just dwelling on the feeling. So allowing the feeling, and then also focusing on what we can control and what we can do, and reframing our thoughts. And so it's not just about dwelling on, how we're feeling, it's about how we're feeling and putting in tools and strategies to help improve the way we're feeling. Hopefully that makes sense. Somebody mentioned they like the metaphor, the dance. I mean, it really is a dance between PD and care partner. And exactly this, I like how you say, while dancing, you may both fall and then you stand up again. Exactly. And again, nobody's perfect. There's no, unfortunately, there's no rule book on how to go about this. As you all know, Parkinson's is a very individual and very complex disorder. And so there's no cookie cutter one size fits all for this kind of thing and for the approach. So the things I'm teaching are more generalized, and anybody can use these concepts and these strategies for coping. There we go. From different countries. I like learning about self-compassion. Dad definitely needs more of that. Yeah, I like this. Ambiguous grief, somebody mentioned. Yes. Apparently there's this talk on ambiguous grief at the UBC Brain Wellness Clinic, which ambiguous grief is a lot of what I was speaking of before. Somebody mentioned, what time is it on the 3rd, the UBC Brain Wellness Clinic? I'm actually not too sure. Maybe Pat could share what time that is on the 3rd. So apparently on October 3rd, the UBC Brain Wellness Clinic is putting on a talk of a seminar, on ambiguous grief. So ambiguous grief is essentially dealing with ambiguous loss. So when we say ambiguous loss, it means that, while we haven't lost the individual, let's say, we have lost parts of the individual. So that can be, losing ourselves, parts of ourselves, psychologically or physiologically or physically. So what that means is we're not completely gone, we are still here, but parts of us are lost. So dealing with grief, but it's fragmented because it's not a whole. It's hard to describe in such a short time. I want to go into so much more with you guys, but maybe tune in. Maybe I'll tune in as well on the 3rd, and they'll be speaking of ambiguous grief. I think at 10 it says. Somebody said 10 a.m. So if you just look up UBC Brain Wellness Program, you should find the information on that. And if you need more, if you have more questions on that, you can always email our info at line. My main takeaway. Somebody wrote here, my main takeaway was managing the uncertainty and fears around how PD will progress. Yeah. For her mom in the future, by accepting that we cannot control much that will happen or not in the future because we can't control it. Exactly. So that's a huge takeaway. And it's true, you know, Parkinson's or no Parkinson's, we really truly cannot change what's going to happen. And so a really quick tip, if you're noticing your thought process is like, what if this, what if that, what if this, what if that, that kind of thinking is anxiety thinking. So what if, what if, what if? And I think we could all agree that we could sit here for 10 hours and what if the whole world and be no further ahead of in 10 hours. So wanting to replace the what if type of thoughts with what is right now. So what if, you know, I'm going to give an example. What if my mom can't do this in a couple of years? What if I have to do that? What if she can't live on her own? I'm going to have to take care of her. This can snowball, right? 1,000 different thoughts are already in your head and you're no further along. Okay, so instead, okay, well, right now she can live alone and right now she is capable. And right now I'm, you know, putting into place certain things that I need to, should that happen in the future. And right now, you know, so on and so forth. So that's, again, the practice of bringing it back to the present. Doesn't mean only focusing on right this minute, because obviously we do need to make some plans and preparations for the future, but it's going to help us focus on right now, because right now, all those catastrophizing thoughts are not true and they may never come to fruition. So it's like worrying twice, right? Worrying now and then worrying when and if they actually came to fruition. So we got to try and learn to sort of control our thought processes and bring them back. Because again, it's the only thing we have control over is the way we allow ourselves to think about things. Will the charts be posted on the website? If yes, can you give the link again? The charts. Which charts are we referring to? My notes? The charts be posted on the website. Yes, my notes. Yes, we will post my slides on the website. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And the link will be here. I can give our website. It's just www.parkinson.bc.ca. It's the same way, the same website you would have signed up for this webinar on. Excuse my language. And it'll be under resources. So I wonder if I could pull up where exactly they're there. Maybe Alana, you can pull up exactly where they would be able to find it here. No, I think maybe we can email it out as well. You can email me and I can send the link to it. Perfect. So I'll email Alana my slides and she'll get that. She'll make sure it gets out to everyone. And if you ever have any problems, you can email here, do info@parkinson.bc.ca, or Alana just put her personal email in the chat as well. Perfect. And so we'll make sure we get all those slides to you. Okay. And so just time for a few more questions. I know it's a lot of information to take in a short webinar, but hopefully you planted some seeds for today. And Alana's just writing, it takes about a week to post the video and the slides. So expect it to take about a week. Courtney, will you share your contact info? Absolutely. So sorry about that. I thought I had, oh no, I didn't put my personal one. Absolutely. So my email at Parkinson's, I will include Oops, that's not it. My apologies. Parkinson.bc.ca. Wonder if I can just write it here while everyone's watching. Here we go. Put it right in the tab here. Courtney at. I have two. I'm going to put the other one. Counseling at Parkinson.bc.ca. This is my email at the Parkinson Society. And if you want to get me privately, my email is Courtney@CourtneyDoherty.com. And there you go. I'm best by email because I'm usually in back-to-back sessions. So my phone is off it's not often on ringing. So yeah, I appreciate everybody's time. If there's any other questions, we do have just a couple more moments. Thank you everybody for showing up. And that's the last thing I want to say is you should all be proud of yourselves for showing up for yourselves, for your partners, for your loved ones, and working on yourself, because life's hard and none of us have it figured out. And so this is all we can do is plant seeds and learn and grow and try and make some changes, right? So if you have any questions, let us know. And otherwise, I'll let Alana wrap up for today. Thank you so much, everyone. No, someone wrote the October 3rd is not through Parkinson's. It's through the UBC Brain Wellness Program. I don't even know about it. I just saw it in the chat. It's on Ambiguous Grief. I don't know, Alana, do you know anything more about it? Thanks so much, everyone.
It may be posted on our website.
Okay, yeah.
Under other organizations, it could be there for events.
Good point. Okay.
But I don't know about it offhand. No.
Me neither, yeah. So just UBC Brain Wellness Program. I'll put it in the chat there. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy your afternoon, okay? And just one thing at a time. Try and notice your thoughts. If I can leave you with anything, notice where they're going and keep them in the moment, okay? Thanks everyone.
So much. Thanks so much, Courtney, for such an informative talk. And thank you all for attending today. There should be a feedback evaluation form that pops up after the webinar ends. So please do take a moment to fill that out. Your feedback is always important to us. And also a friendly reminder that it's not too late to register for our provincial conference in person in Richmond, BC at the Radisson Hotel on October 15th. So we have a great lineup of speakers, plenaries, breakout sessions, wellness rooms. We do have some talks for Carepartners as well. So please do check that out. You can still register, and I would love to meet you all and see you there. Thanks very much. Have a great afternoon.